Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah Shewey. I am the founder and CEO of Happily. We produce world-class carbon zero experiences and live stream broadcasts. And every once in a while, I come onto the universes of Hello, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube of our Happily and accounts, and just introduce you to a friend of mine, and we talk a little bit about what's happening and what we're thinking about in the world of events and experiences. And today I'm really excited to introduce you all to Ryan Trupp. He's one of our creative directors at Happily that's really pushing the envelope with us in building really like cool, immersive virtual worlds using Unreal Engine, which is a fantastic program. And Ryan's gonna actually ask him to come and just talk through and like demystify for anybody who is building like hybrid productions and virtual productions, just the whole process of what is Unreal Engine, why would you want to use it, how could you use it for live event productions. And I'm gonna bring him up. Say, hey, Ryan.
Hello.
Where are you calling from? You're in Colorado, that's right?
Yeah. And you are in Taipei, right?
Taipei, ni hao, da jia hao. That's like the extent of my Chinese. I was like actually like in an elevator with a woman today, and she's like started like talking to me in Chinese, and I was like, the only other thing I can say is like wo bu zhang zong wen, which means like I don't speak Chinese, and she goes like, oh, and instantly in English she goes, very nice to meet you. Your dress is very weird. And I was like, oh, well, thank you. Like in perfect English. That's my experience of Taiwan right now. Anyways. Thanks. Hey, thanks for coming in. I feel like a lot of like creative folks are like always like really generous with sharing their tips and stuff like internally with other creatives, but sometimes like don't like really talk through and open up their process more broadly. So I really appreciate that you joined us today.
You bet. I mean, I talk to anybody who will listen. It's usually only the other creatives. They're like, oh, that's really interesting. Everybody else is like, let's talk about something else.
Oh, that's so funny because, so we worked, for those like listening in, we worked on 2 projects just recently using Unreal, and one was for a client for ST Microelectronics. Whoop to the ST team, they're amazing, allowing us to being like really bold and taking the risk to put their whole show in a green screen. That was pretty awesome, and in a virtual space that they couldn't ever really tangibly feel. And then we also did a project using Unreal for our own product, which is our own campaign, which is TEDxHappily. And we learned, I think, like a lot through both of those experiences. And I had kind of read this like 100-page virtual production guide that Unreal Engine put out. Have you read that? It's so good.
Yeah. Some of it, it's 100 pages. I didn't realize that. I have not read all of it.
Oh, there's a volume 1 and a volume 2. I haven't finished volume 2 yet, but I did I picked up volume 1 and I was just like, oh, this is amazing. I'd seen so for those who maybe don't know, Unreal Engine, I feel like got really famous, at least put on my radar, when The Mandalorian used Unreal Engine. And what you do is there's an LED wall, but you can also use like a green screen. And inside of the sort of background on the wall, there's a whole universe and environment that's pre-built. So before Unreal and before this like new production workflow, the way that you could do CGI backgrounds and these big blockbuster explosives and stuff was actually you would shoot these actors in a green screen in a studio to begin with. And then in post-production, you would then have all of your creatives and your animators and your visual effects folks build these environments and try to match them up together. And so now what Unreal has done is it's flipped all of that on its head. And then we have creatives and building out these, like Ryan, like building out these environments and universes. And it's done in pre-production and also during production. So in fact, there was a moment, remember, Ryan, where we were talking and I was like, who's the director here? I feel like Ryan's the director. And then when we go on site, it like switches to like Chris, who is like our streaming engineer and director. It's can you talk a little bit more about how things have changed with your role now using Unreal?
Well, I mean, I'm glad you bring that up, because the whole reason I went to Unreal is so that I have complete control over everything, because I'm just that kind of person. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I mean, and that's the fun about it, is that we're, because I keep thinking about like kind of the direction of our industry and the direction of like Facebook has their metaverse, and we can start talking about that a little bit. I mean, for me, it's this, it comes from the same place that it's always come from, which is to create an interesting environment that tells a story. I mean, so I come from a theater background, and the constraints of the theater means that you're presenting within the proscenium, or within a certain environment, and you're telling a story. You're creating this world, and so now things are shifting and blurring together in this kind of virtual world that we find ourselves in. To be able to talk to someone in Taipei and in Colorado, it's this great technology. And so because we can do this, now it's like, well, what kind of environments can we can we leverage? What kind of technologies can we leverage for this kind of interaction to facilitate us being able to talk to each other? And I mean, the benefit too is that I don't have to fly to Taipei for us to have this conversation. So if we can do this virtually, then what kind of environments can we create virtually? And the Unreal Engine is great because it was created for a game, and in that game, you find yourself immersed in this environment, and they had to figure out a way to create this environment in a way that wasn't going to take up too much processing power on your computer. And so everything is kind of baked into this environment ahead of time. Once you start playing the game, the computer doesn't have to think as much because it's already been kind of thought about, and rendered. And so
computers are like always complaining about thinking. It was like such a bad joke. Go. Sorry.
Well, and I mean, the other point is, if the computer doesn't have to think about rendering the environment, then the computer can think about, like shooting a gun or whatever when you're in that game. But for our purposes, the computer can think about taking the live video and incorporating that into the environment. It doesn't have to worry about that whole environment that we created ahead of time. And so there's a lot of fun things that we can do with that.
Should we show them like? Yeah, because like even like should we? I was going to just show like really quick like a clip from when the Zuck. I don't know why I was blanking out on Zuckerberg because I call him the Zuck all the time. But when Mark Zuckerberg was doing his keynote, right, like for for the metaverse, like here, like I feel like it's like in Unreal, right? It's actually like he's in a fabricated space, or is this actually his home?
Right. It is tricky if you kind of break it down. Some of it may be real life. There's parts of that where he's sitting at a desk, and that's an actual desk that he's sitting in. But then looking out the window behind him, it's obviously a virtual environment. And
it's so close, like, like that's what's like amazing about the power of Unreal is it can look so realistic, which is something that like I think people like when they think about Unreal, because it started as a gaming platform, they're and they have to build these massive universes that people are like running around and jumping and shooting and stuff in, that there hasn't been like a lot of, or like as many like sort of event and like creative people thinking about this gaming platform as a way to have a very realistic virtual space, which is really, I think, a lot of what you brought to our like last two productions.
Yeah. Well, and to go back to the metaverse thing, like I keep saying, if you think about the Apple iPhone keynote, like the first one, was like in 2010 or whenever it was, or earlier 2008, I don't remember. But like that kind of set the standard for tech on-stage keynotes. I thought, because we're still talking about that keynote, like, just the way that it was presented and the way that, everything was kind of framed. And I think this metaverse keynote, I mean, say what you will about all the other aspects of the company, but I think that really kind of set the bar for this type of virtual environment. He started that out with, realistic surroundings. So it looked like he was actually in his house, and they did a really good job of kind of seamlessly integrating him into that. And then as the keynote progressed, you could see out the window, or, things were floating, and it was obviously this virtual environment. So that's the other fun thing about all this too, is that, we can make it realistic, we can make it playful and otherworldly, and there's lots of variation in there too. And I keep saying, designing for Unreal Engine is the same process that we've always had with designing an environment, except now we don't have to worry about things like gravity, or how are we going to find a way to get giant scenic pieces into the studio. There are no limits,
Yeah, like I'm showing this clip because definitely this was like done virtually, and it was I actually like saw a tweet about how like Jackie like created like this, she came up with this imagination of what the most beautiful set would look like for her, and they built this in their virtual environment. And it's like you can kind of trick it, right? Like with like bringing in real furniture pieces, bringing in real lighting pieces like that. It's really, it's really interesting, like the things that you can do.
Yeah, and they're sitting on real furniture. But that furniture isn't green, and you can kind of key off whatever color you want to. But in that instance, it would be easy to put a green screen behind them, because then the camera or the Unreal Engine removes everything that's green in that environment and gives you a surface on which you can kind of provide whatever environment you want to.
Oh yeah, I'll show you guys. I was actually sitting on a green screen like Apple box when we did TEDxHappily, and like you can see like here, like I'm sitting like on a log, right? And that's like, and so I didn't have a log inside of the set, but this is also like inside of Unreal, and there's like really cool things like, these plants are moving in the background, and like I think it's also so great how you really brought that sensibility of like the subtle movement. It doesn't have to be like big and in your face, but it actually like helps sell the reality of it better than my terrible lighting that I had. Lighting was such a thing that we realized, right? Like when we were, going through the process of building out the set for the ST project in particular. I want to show a little bit of what the Unreal Engine looks like in the concept stage too, and maybe like, show a little fly through, and you can talk us through camera placements, because I think that's also something that's like really interesting that that you can do with this. So here, so check this out. So this is like kind of, I mean, Ryan, talk us through. This is like kind of halfway through the project, right?
This was a very early sketch. It was like, let's do a test. Ryan, how soon can you get us a test? And I was like, I'm just going to throw this stuff together. And I did this in like an hour. So they could, so Chris could kind of fly around the space and kind of play with camera angles and things like that. So this is, really rough, just flat forms, but, in terms of a 3-dimensional sketch is kind of how I treated this. Then it gave me the opportunity to go in and add, realistic lighting and realistic materials. This early sketch, we placed our speaker on a stage, and we realized if we did a green screen in behind the speaker and on the floor, then that speaker could be anywhere essentially. So, but this is, kind of raw in the program in Unreal Engine. So you see the little cartoon lights there to represent where we're dropping in our lights.
Yeah, super cool. And then I'm going to pull up the sort of the actual. With that project was really interesting because they had rented this, hotel. I had to shout out to the SFO Hyatt, who let us load in earlier than that was they gave us an extra, I don't know how many hours, we got to load in before at 10 instead of 3. And that day when we were loading in, it was what was it called? It was the death cyclone or some crazy tornado.
Bomb cyclone.
I mean, I was like, what? I can't believe this is happening to us. We had this whole, because we had this hotel ballroom, and usually people go and they rent a sound stage, and we go onto a sound stage that had all of this green screen setup, but we repurposed the ballroom and turned it into a pop-up, studio so that we could utilize the facilities that were under contract. And what was really cool about this is we even sort of for the next, project, we're thinking it's gosh, this is so much fun. We can set up these green screen studios in multiple locations, not just on this property, but in other properties where we might have satellite events and experiences. And then you can bring everybody into, the same environment. But so it looks like a standard sort of green screen setup. But then we got to sort of this point. Hold on, let me find the thing. Oh yeah, here. And so this is this is actually the show sort of opening and start. And here's their exec talking. Oh, you can hear their exec talking, but you can see where there's the graphics behind. These gray boxes could actually also change lighting and color. And yeah, I don't know, Ryan, I'd love to sort of hear from you a bit more about I thought it was a very interesting choice that you made to build what would look like a set, for a conference and just do that in a virtual space and it still made it bigger. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it goes back to there are no rules, so we have to establish our own rules. And we could have gone, he could just be standing on a cloud in space, if we wanted him to. And so, I guess with this process, we wanted something that was kind of grounding, that was human, that was personable. This client wanted to be able to connect with the viewers in a way that was, kind of a human connection. So we kind of talked about this. We wanted something that was kind of a recognizable space. There's parts about this that are, slightly fantastical. The graphics are kind of floating there. They didn't move. They could be attached to something, but there's just kind of a hint there that there's kind of this virtual environment that we've created. But I didn't want it to go too far. We also wanted to have fun with it a little bit too, but so this goes back to my theatrical training and event design training. You want a set that's versatile, that showcases, in this case, the speaker, and then we had a screen that came in, and we could kind of highlight slides and things like that. But we wanted to create something that was modern and exciting and human.
Yeah, and we also used that set, or we used the same stage and created two looks, right? We had this main stage set, and on the same studio, in the same studio space, we also had a completely different fireside set, which was I thought was a really fun and super cool way of changing changing up the space and really repurposing. Part of when I mentioned earlier about how we have carbon zero productions. I mean, usually one of the biggest, pieces of waste is all of the construction material that goes into building these sets that you just then break down and throw away. And here we bought two chairs, right? Which they're going to use in their office now. Those
do you
really
have an example
waste.
of the fireside?
Oh yeah, let me find that one. I wasn't super prepared for that. I was
oh yeah,
but yes, let me find that one, and then. But no, it's okay.
Well,
I'll look for it. But
I mean, and so that highlights the fun of this too, which is that we could do this complete scene change in the span of. I mean, I don't remember how quick we had to do it, but the plan was to do it quickly in the span of 10 minutes or something, right? So we just brought on two more chairs onto the stage, maybe changed the cameras around a little bit, and then poof, we have a brand new set that's completely different than the one before.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, and by the way, we did this whole production in what, 6 weeks? The runway was crazy short. We were thinking about, we actually had designs for an actual physical set because there was going to be a whole audience there, remember? Yep. And then Delta hit, and then we got the call probably in September or something, and the show was in October, that we were going to go full virtual. And
and I think that saved us too, because we were already kind of talking about a hybrid situation. So we kind of designed the physical environment with with cameras and with ways to bring in a virtual audience in mind to begin with. And it was well, we're also going to have people in the space. And then Delta started to kind of spike, and everything kind of got canceled again. And the client said, well, we're happy enough with kind of the direction of this. Can we just go virtual? And we said, yeah, I mean, we've laid the groundwork. We're just going to keep going with it. We're going to tweak a little bit, but we didn't have to just cancel everything. We could just kind of shift gears a little bit, and it wasn't a major problem.
Yeah, totally. And so yeah, so I found it. So here's what the sort of backstage looks like. And again, even the rug is fake, right? And the plant, we have to call it out. I think it was done really, really well. And we did have, I don't know if we'll get to sort of seeing it, but we did have a full 3 camera shoot, so that we got some close-ups. And this is more of sort of the main establishing shot. We were able to change out the logos in the middle for when there were different partners and stuff in there. I think we're going to sort of some of the video transitions that we had, but that was really cool, because we were going to do we had this big ballroom, and we had 3 stages: a fireside stage, a main stage, and there was a parallel technical track that was happening. And it was so cool. Like you all saw the backstage, we were able to combine the fireside stage with the main stage and just really pull that together.
Yeah. Well, and all this, is fun for the future, I mean, because there will be a time when we will all get back together, and I mean, there's already, whisperings of that, people actually being in the same room and talking to each other. But I think, like, the great part about all this is that we've figured out how to do it virtually. So we can continue having, meetings with people in Taipei when someone is in Colorado. That's not going away. And, so this technology has this great way of just dropping barriers, and enriching the systems we've already put in place, which is to create an interesting place for ideas to happen. That's what we're in the business of, providing space for cool things to be discussed.
Yeah, totally. And also I think that we haven't, we haven't like really seen yet, or like, had the opportunity to work with a client that's like, look, we've built this world, just like Fortnite built this world, like all these other, companies. And I feel like this is like a real building block for people to have their own version of their metaverses, and that can start, like you can debut them as your sort of like big user conferences or community events. But we can keep that going like online, and people can start to like interact with each other as well, on a website, and in the virtual space. And that can just like keep developing, over time. I'm really excited about that. Like this, even like we're already reducing sort of like waste on sets, and we're like imagining and putting people in like all these other, spaces, but you can keep even just kind of building and layering like complexities on there, and bringing in other artists to also help co-create these universes. It's really, I don't know, I feel like we're at the very beginning of something, really big, and very like these experiences that feel really immersive. What I love too, personally, sorry, I'm like talking a lot about this, I'm very amped. I just love that I love that we can see a person and it's not an avatar, like you can see all of the nuances of, even I like to see people like nervous, right? Like it's just the drama of watching like humans is so much more interesting than avatars. And this, allows us, is like, I think we're going to sort of get closer to that with this kind of technology.
Well, and that also kind of brings up this interesting side of it too, which is that, before we would have events or, theatrical productions or whatever, where you are an audience member, but you're like in the back row. And so you're seeing like this little tiny sliver of life on stage, and you're enjoying the show. But this virtual world that we find ourselves in, you're like in the front row, and so you can
run to the back, or to like another, like when we add like audio, like spatial audio can run to other places too, right?
Yeah. But, it gives the audience a chance to be closer to whoever's presenting, or that front row seat, which is exciting.
Totally. I feel like I go to these like, big conferences, or we do these big conferences, and I'm just like watching the big screen the whole time. Like anyways, like even if, I am in the center, it's just because again, can like see people up close. Well, Ryan, like, what, like just sort of my last question, and then we'll cut, but, what are you most excited about? Like, what do you think is sort of next with this technology?
I don't know. I mean, there's pitfalls, of course. There's things that we need to watch out for. There's a whole new world, so it's exciting. There might be problems that crop up, so we have to kind of be vigilant with all that. But the sky's the limit, and so it's really exciting. And like I said, designing in this virtual environment, you don't have the the same kind of constraints that you did before with getting the scenery to fit through the door, or even gravity. It's like you could go crazy, and like, so the possibilities are endless, which makes it really exciting, because you can just dial in exactly what you want that environment to be. So there's something really great about that.
Totally. I'm gonna to that point, to sort of end with this scene that you made for us. It's like, oh, put me in a future jungle, right? And yeah, we have all these beautiful plants around us, and these really cool spacey things, and that is it's great to also just help, just visualize what the future can look like in real life too.
Yeah,
Cool.
Definitely. The future
Okay, well,
is bright.
I can't wait for the next one that we get to work together on. And just it's just always fun collaborating with you. And again, thank you so much for coming and walking us through the process here. It's really exciting.
Yeah, this is fun. Thank you.
Okay, see you later. Thanks, everyone.